everyone, welcome to another video. Today I have my card for the Crackerbox and Suzy Stamps August Challenge. Here's a few things that you need to know about this challenge. All you need to do is create a card or project using the monthly theme. This month it's Halloween. Then you need to link up your creation to the challenge blog post. I will leave that link in the description box below. Mention and link Crackerbox and Suzy Stamps. If you're on Instagram, use the hashtag #SoSuzyStampsChallenge. Any brand of stamps is acceptable, but if you do use Crackerbox and Suzy Stamps, you double your chances of winning. So that's a little bit of a plus. There is a limit on this challenge to 5 entries unless you use Crackerbox and Suzy Stamps. Then you can enter as many times as you want. Now last but not least, only new projects, don't backlink any old projects. Also, this challenge is a little bit different. It runs from the 15th of every month until the 14th day of the next month. So we're going to start August 15th and the challenge will end on September 14th. One person, a random drawing is done, and one person will win a $25 gift card to the Crackerbox and Suzy Stamps store. Now the winner will be announced on the 15th day of the next month, so this month's winner will be announced September 15th on the new challenge post. So make sure you check that out if you enter a card of your own. So, like I said, this challenge does have a theme, and this month it's Halloween. I'm going to be stamping out a fun and just a lot of different stamps going on here, so it's going to be a packed full little scene here that I'm going to create, but I'm starting off with this spider web stamp. Now I wanted to make sure that this was right in my corners, so I'm actually using an old tool of mine that I actually forgot I had until somebody commented about using a Stamp-A-Majig in one of my YouTube videos. I was like, oh, I do have that tool. So I grabbed it out. This is super simple and easy to use. All you need to do is line up your little stamp with the corner and then stamp down onto that piece of, it's kind of like plastic that comes with it. Then you can place that plastic over your cardstock, line it up, you put your little corner tool right there, then you know that that's exactly where you need to place your stamp corner and stamp it down, and it stamps perfectly. It's a little more cumbersome using this, I would say, than using like a Misty or something like that. But for this particular technique, it's what I needed to use. So there comes a time and place for this little guy in my craft room. So I stamped both of those little webs in the top left and bottom right hand corner on a piece of 4 by 5¼ inch white cardstock. I did heat emboss those with some clear embossing powder, and I used VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink to stamp those. It's pigment ink, it stays wet for a really long time, so I can go ahead and heat emboss. Now I'm coming in with this ghost stamp. This is from the new release, and isn't he cute? I'm going to stamp him 3 times. Then I've got this little spider. I'm going to stamp him twice. I'm using that same VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink, and I will be heat embossing these with clear embossing powder as well, just to keep everything looking really cohesive on this card since there are so many different things going on. So I made sure those were really covered, and then I went ahead and heat set those and fussy cut them out. If you have an electronic cutting machine, you can use that, but I don't, so I just use my hands and fussy cut. Now the next thing I wanted to do was create my background. This was the main focus that I put in this card. So I am distressing blending. I chose some Halloween colors. I've got some Spice Marmalade, some Seedless Preserves, and Hickory Smoke that I am blending all together onto my panel. Now I am really building these up and making them nice and bright and vibrant because I want to do a little bit of lifting with these later on. So I am going over and over and over in these, making sure I really get that color down. And also with distressing, the more color you put down, the more they move around and blend, so that's a plus. Once I get to a certain point, I do pull out a piece of extra cardstock to keep my fingers on. That way I don't get any fingerprints on my cards. It will. Trust me, I've done it too many times. I splattered some water on that background, let it sit for about 30 seconds, and then I blotted it up with a paper towel, and this pulled up beautifully. Most of the time I don't get this kind of pull on a cardstock, but I really put down that color this time. Most of the time I need to use watercolor cardstock to get it to look like that. Next I wanted to add some black splatters You can use whatever you have on hand. I like to use acrylic paint just because that's what gives me the most rich color and the most opaqueness with my splatters. I did not do mine in a box. I would highly suggest doing that because I am still picking black paint splatters all over off of everything in my craft room at this point. So I mixed some of that acrylic paint. This is actually a heavy body acrylic paint, so I mixed that with some water to thin it down and then splatter it on. I went pretty heavy-handed with that, and there's a closer look at that lifting of the ink and also those splatters to create that background. It really is a lot of fun to do those, and I wanted that to be the star of the show. So I'm going to do the rest of the card very simply. I've got those little ghosts that I cut out. I want to add a little bit of depth and dimension to those, so all I'm going to do is take my hickory smoke distressing, which I used on the background, and I just put a little bit on the bottom and a little bit on the top. That gives them a little bit of color so they're not stark white. They look a little dirty, if you will. And then I also colored in the eyes with some black marker. This is one of my alcohol markers. You just need to be careful when using your alcohol markers next to your embossing because it can kind of disintegrate it if you're not careful. So just be cautious if you go that route. Now for my sentiment, I am using the Happy Haunting with the Drips sentiment, and I am stamping this on a little square of cardstock that fits it. I'm not exactly sure the size. I believe it was about 2 inches by 1.5 inches. I matted that with some black cardstock, and then it was time to put everything together. I started off by putting some Fun Foam and double-sided adhesive on the back of my panel that I made my background on. Now I like to lay everything out before I start sticking anything down. That gives me a really good idea of where it needs to go so I don't have to go and peel anything up and ruin what I've worked on. Once I had a pretty good idea of where it needed to go, then I could start pulling off backing papers and sticking everything down. So I'm going to start off and place these little spiders down. I cut 2 of those, and those guys are going to hang out in the little webs in the bottom right hand corner and top left hand corner. And I just stuck these down every which way, really no rhyme or reason to it. I just wanted to make sure that they were a little bit different so they didn't look like the exact same stamp. On the center, I'm going to go ahead and place my sentiment, and then I'll start putting those little ghosts beside them. I have dimensional adhesive on all of these stamps. That way, everything is kind of on the same level and it stands away from that background because that background is pretty overpowering. Then I'm going to go ahead and peel the backing paper off of my panel, the entire thing, and I can stick it to an A2 top folding card base. I just undo my card base, that way I can stick it down and it's not bouncing around on me. But once that was down, that finished off the card. I absolutely love this guy. I mean, the dimension on it alone, it does have 2 layers, so it is a little bit thicker, but it's not anything drastic where it's not going to go through the mail easily. You might have to get it hand canceled, but that's okay with me. Here's a closer look, or a few photos of this card. I am in love with the background on this one. It really turned out better than I thought it would. When I first started putting down distress inks, I thought I had made a huge mistake in the color combination, but I am so happy with the way it turned out. One last picture of the finished card, and that is going to do it for me today. On the left side of your screen, there are going to be a few different links you can click on. You can also subscribe to my channel over there if you haven't already. And if you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up down below. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and happy crafting.